Peace, family. Welcome to another episode of We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club. I am Ikemba, a member of the Public Relations Committee.
You wanted to introduce me last week, so I don't know if you want to do it this week. Hey, everyone. Hey everyone, it's Tyranny, Steering Committee Chair of We Charge Colonialism.
All right. And we're back with another episode of We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club. Excited to be here and have these discussions and analysis of our reading. And so today, we're without Frank. That's why you can see I'm a little down, but it's okay. We're gonna work through this. But we have some great conversation, discussion to bring to you with our weekly roundup. And today we're going to be going back to chapter 13A of the Black Radical Tradition, and continuing to read Francis M. Bill's Black Women's Manifesto, Double Jeopardy, to be Black and Female. So we're going to pick up from page 423. So for all those people who want to get themselves set up for that. But we're going to start off as usual with our weekly roundup. And Tyranny, what's in the news?
So I want to talk about what's going on over in Ghana. I think that's real relevant because of the actual conversation We Charge Colonialism had on Monday about revolutionary repatriation, the idea that African people returning to the United States, that we're not just returning to Africa, that we're not just returning to Africa just to enjoy a comfortable life, but we're returning to engage in revolutionary change. And I think this is a good example because a lot of people have this idea of Ghana being one of the best destinations. Many of you know my husband's Ghanaian, so eventually I'm going to move to Ghana with him. But I think the thing that people should know is that while it might be presented as being this ultra peaceful society, that there's a lot of things that are going on actively on the ground that are not peaceful. So poverty, obviously, disenfranchisement, having people who are neo-colonial puppets, rather, that's not a peaceful situation. So I think it's something for people to be aware of. So specifically what's going on in this area is, or this issue I want to talk about, there was an activist killed last week. His name was Ibrahim Kaka Muhammad. He was a part of this group, a group that I have a lot of respect for over in Ghana. It's called the Economic Fighters League. I've seen them actively engaging and trying to put out information to the public that Ghana is not necessarily the paradise that it's marketed to us to be, particularly for the everyday Africans who are struggling. So this group have been very active and very much campaigning against this idea that Ghana is good for all Africans and trying to make it more representative for the masses of the people. This individual, he actually would go into his local, I believe it's a locality, I believe it's called Ijura, and record people who are from his town talking about the conditions that they are actually living through. And this caught the attention of the local politicians. So the ruling party in Ghana is the NPP. That's the one that Nana Akufo-Addo, he's the leader of. And of course, you have politicians assigned to different localities. So supposedly the local NPP politicians caught wind of him recording this messaging about the conditions of people in Ghana. And this is what's being alleged, is that he's been receiving death threats from them. And it's believed that some NPP officials hired people to possibly beat him to death. And that's what happened last week. So it was all over social media. And then following that, at his funeral, which I believe was the next day or the day after, there was protest afterwards because the people of Ejura, he was a beloved community member. So particularly the youth, they were very upset, and there were some youth who were blocking the road. And when this happened, the military in Ghana, so if you don't know, a lot of places in Africa, they don't just have the police, they have the actual military with guns, keeping people in order. They shot live ammunition into a crowd, killing, I believe, 2 other people. So I think this is just important for us to know that you know, we have to be willing to engage inside of these types of difficulties and not just necessarily have this idea that I'm just going to live an easy life while my brothers and sisters are suffering. So it's an unfortunate situation, and rest in peace, rest in power to all the people who died. And it's an ongoing conversation I think we just need to keep having.
Yeah, that's serious. Sorry about that. Hey, my nephew. But yeah, this is serious conversation to have because I mean we are talking about repatriation and just understanding the politics. Other countries that we're going to, whether it's Ghana, Kenya, Zimbabwe. There's a lot of, we already know there's a lot of instability in most of these countries. Ghana being one of the most stable, I guess, like of the countries, but there's still like political corruption that on the continent as a result of Europeans' hands and United States' hands being in Africa. And so, they're just like America, a lot of these African countries are trying to project a particular image to the world. And so when, as the brother was trying to expose what was happening on the ground, I understand how the government will come down on this brother because, they want people to repatriate to Africa. But I know like that's not really, I know the bigger point though is just going over there and understanding that the struggle is still to overturn this colonial situation that we have. So, I think like a lot of the people who come from Europe or America, talking about like Africans that are in the diaspora that go over there, they do go with like this colonial mindset and they want to go over there and live lavish. I remember hearing this one person, they was talking about like, was in this conversation, they were talking about land. They was like, yeah, I've been living in Ghana all this time, like, and there's no like benefits or anything. Like, we should get this. It's like people who've been living there don't even, receive these things. But, that's a bourgeois type of philosophy, though, that people have. But that's the thing. It's just like understanding that, hey, we're at war with colonialism all over. When we repatriate, like the war isn't over. It isn't vacation time. But yeah, I mean that's what that's.
Yeah, and so I don't know if you haven't seen already, we had on was it Wednesday, I think, we had Friends of the Congo executive director Maurice Carney. He was on our channel, on WCC's channel, and he was talking also about you're talking about how Ghana, also Rwanda, is also kind of like marketed as one of those destinations. But if you don't know the politics of what's going on, like this safety that a lot of people are told, or the stability, like it's not stable for everyone. And so in the case of Rwanda, it's a country that a lot of people are flocking to because it's kind of like this destination where it's going to be clean and, everything's developed. That's the word they like to use. But no one's connecting the fact that if you look at what's going on in the Congo, how is it that Rwanda is the #1 exporter of cobalt, this materials inside of our cell phones that's very valuable to the West, but doesn't pay the Congolese hardly anything? How are they the #1 exporter of cobalt where they don't have cobalt? It's because they take it from the Congo. So that's just another example. I think, the whole purpose of WCC releasing a revolutionary repatriation program is because we see that a lot of people are well-meaning. Like a lot of our people genuinely want to go to Africa because we love Africa and that's where our people are. We want to be among our people. And so we just want to push it further and say, okay, you love your people, you want to be among your people. If you love your people, it doesn't just stop with being among your people, it's fighting for your people and fighting with your people. So I think that's it's the ongoing conversation about just different places. Why are certain destinations like the places that we pick? And like you said, Ikemba, like certain colonial mindsets, like, so when you talk about land, I just think we should be uncomfortable with this idea that it's so easy for us to buy land because of our proximity to the American empire that has given us a level of privilege that we could just easily get access to something, while many of the people are landless, and we are them, they are us, so we can't just be comfortable in saying, well, we're just gonna, have all this, and our people are gonna continue to live landlessly. It's a lot of issues, I think, that we just have to be willing to confront and go the extra mile, and not just stop at loving Africa and wanting to invest in Africa, but wanting Africa to be free. That's two different things, and they can collide, but they cannot collide. And I think in most cases they don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And just even like thinking about this too, it makes me think about us going back, like following this tradition of African people wanting to go back to the homeland, wanting to go back to the motherland. Because we know like there's a lot of people who are here who we've been so far removed from Africa. They're just like, this is all that they know. So we know like there's a segment that want to, stay here. And like there's nothing wrong with that. Like the struggle is all around the world. Like colonial capitalism exists everywhere. And I think like this United States represents one of the fronts, against this system. But there has always been like this history of African people wanting to go back to the continent. And there has been Africans who set up in like Liberia, Sierra Leone. And there has been some contradictions with that I think we can learn from as well. So when we do talk about like going over there, making sure we have the right mindset, we can look at what happened there and how like, historically it has led to conflict with Africans that repatriated with indigenous Africans all the way up to the present time. And so that's something that we don't want to do. We want to make sure that we go over there and build relationships with the people on the ground so we can build a united front against our common enemy.
Yeah, like you said, like I think we also keep in mind, like a lot of our ancestors have already given us the roadmap. And I think that's the thing that pisses me off, like a lot of times with our generation, is that we're trying to like reinvent the wheel when people have already showed us this is how you do it. And when it comes to like going back, like, Brother Obie Abuna Jr., he always says, if you're going to go back like W.E.B. Du Bois, go back like Kwame Ture, go back like people who went back, go back like Malcolm X. When they went back, it was for revolutionary politics. Like when Malcolm went over to Africa, he was actively campaigning for a Pan-Africanist agenda where Africans in Africa and Africans in the U.S. would be connected. Or, of course, W.E.B. Du Bois, he went to Ghana and they revoked his American passport because he was like, cool, I'm staying here. I'm going to work to build the revolutionary government that Kwame Nkrumah was building. Kwame Ture repatriated to Guinea. He was arrested in Guinea. He's persecuted at certain times. And at certain times he was building the All African People's Revolutionary Party. He was building, so it's just a shift, and I think we can do it, but it's just going to take some challenging. So I'll encourage people, if you have not, if you want to join in, we're going to have a clubhouse. I don't know if I can find the link now to just post it in the chat. Hopefully we start next week if everything goes well, and just start having like a weekly meetup where we can talk about revolutionary politics and hopefully prepare people to engage in that type of life whenever they're going back home.
All right. I'm excited about that. So yeah, we're gonna move on to our next topic. Again, appreciate people, new viewers, our people who have been like really consistent and watching this program. We're gonna move on to the next topic, which is we're back in Ethiopia. Last time we were with you, we talked about what was happening in Ethiopia. I know like Tyranny was like, I'm do some more digging. And so this is interesting. We might do a series because so much is happening right there in the country of Ethiopia. So last time, of course, like we discussed, there was a Breakfast Club discussion that happened with some people from Ethiopia who were talking about what was happening on the ground. And it was sort of it was a
Ethiopia and Eritrea.
Oh, and Eritrea, yeah, you know, they're involved, yes. And so the Breakfast Club interview was a response to some people who were part of I would say like pro I'm always messing up the name. Is it Tigray? Okay, from Tigray, and I guess like they were on there and they were talking about what was happening in Tigray, and on the ground talking about Eritrea forces being there, the Ethiopia government coming down, and with all of these abuses against the people in the Tigray region. And so there were some people who came on the Breakfast Club to respond to that, saying like, hey, you know, this is being exaggerated, blown out of proportion, talking about the Tigray, the ruling class just wanting to maintain their power. So, you know, there's a lot of politics on the ground and we're not there. And so we're just, you know, reporting what we're seeing in the news. So recently, Tigray, the people of Tigray, I'm gonna say the Tigray People's Liberation Front has regained control over the region, or actually the capital, Mekelle. And so the Ethiopian government has called for a ceasefire. The Tigray People's Liberation Front has not acknowledged the ceasefire, and they're still fighting until they get rid of the Eritrean. What they claim is to get rid of all of the Eritrean forces and the government, and to seize complete control over that area. And so that's where we are now. The government is trying to save face and saying that they're because this is looking at like a major blow for the Ethiopian government. You know, it shows like, you know, weakness right now for the calling for the ceasefire after 7 or 8 months of being in that region and fighting with the Tigray People's Liberation Front. So it's kind of looking like a loss on the surface, or a major victory, I should say, for the TPLF. And so, you know, right now they're saying that, you know, the ceasefire is for humanitarian reasons because this is planting season, and so they're trying to prevent a man-made famine from taking place in Ethiopia. But you know, like right now, you know, we do like the Tigray People's Liberation Front is continuing to fight, and they have control of the capital in that region. So wondering, you know, Tyranny, you doing the research, you find, cause I feel like, you know, we can't pick a side because I'm saying, I don't know, like it's like both sides I really see is like this fight against, you know, the ruling class on both sides. So yeah.
All right, so I started off where you were, honestly, where it's like, well, both sides, and I'm not completely like still not so knowledgeable enough. I mean, I'm hoping, you know, in talks with possibly having some perspectives from the ground on this channel and also my channel. So hopefully that can happen. But I mean, so I said last week, I don't want to be repetitive. I remember when this first jumped off, because I reported like kind of like you did, you know, Ethiopia, you know, guys, y'all you need to calm down, like blah, 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 blah. But I remember like it was jumped off by Tigray. They were the ones to initiate hostilities. So there was like some type of attack in Ethiopia when it first started back in the fall. And then after that, it became like an all-out war. And that's where people were like, okay, what are you guys doing? Blah, blah, blah. It's very telling to me that Ethiopia has asked for a ceasefire and Tigray is saying no. And that just makes me feel even more like they really are a Western proxy. But besides everything I've heard, like you've had the United Nations reporting all these atrocities inside of Tigray. You've had sanctions against Ethiopia and Eritrea. And now you have what seems like, okay, they're trying to retreat in a ceasefire. And also notice the difference to how the United States is dealing with this and how they dealt with the Israel-Palestinian conflict. Because even that one, like they were supposedly trying to negotiate some type of ceasefire or suggesting a ceasefire to Israel. And Israel's like, no, back off of our business. I haven't heard about the United States having any response to the ceasefire in this instance. So it seems that it really is the case that Tigray is being sponsored by the West to cause instability. And a lot of it, people say it's because of that dam that would give Ethiopia a lot of power inside of the region. And so I don't know. I've also learned in recent times. So I've always been one of those people. I never liked conspiracy theorists that was like, you can't read anything in the news. But I'm starting to learn that's kind of true. Because if you even look at how our revolutionary leaders were depicted by these mainstream news outlets, like it's very different than what we know about them. In fact, if you think about like maybe what you've heard about our freedom fighters before you actually read about them. So I'll say for me, like growing up, before I ever read or anything about Malcolm X, like I just had this image of him in my head. He was this hateful preacher that just didn't like the white man and called them all devils. That was the image that the media painted in my head. Versus when I read him, it's like this was someone that is to me one of the most upstanding human beings to ever have walked this earth, honestly. Look at the contrast. And so I think it calls for us as revolutionary people, number one, to actively, we have to always know that if the United States imperialism is behind something, that it's something we have to stand against. So that's number one. Number two, actively question the narratives that the United Nations, the same United Nations that has actively engaged inside of hiding truths, backing foreign missions that are going to continue colonialism, the same United Nations that has been very corrupt as far as sanctioning the control of the colonial powers of Africa. We have to actively question them. We have to find means and ways to communicate with our brothers and sisters who are on the ground. And that's like a goal, I know, of WCC moving forward, that we have more contacts with organizations who are in different locations, because I'm limited too in that, like when I'm on my YouTube channel, I'm usually like, if I find a news story, like a lot of times it's not going to be from an African site. And even those that are from an African news site, they're oftentimes sponsored by the West, or they're aligned with the West. So it's like a big limitation that we have is communication among our organizations or among our organizers. And so that's a goal of WCC, that we have a communication base separate, from the colonial one that we have to go through BBC or CNN or, all these sites, so that's a limitation. So I think those three things, knowing to actively stand against US imperialism, knowing to actively question the imperialist structure from the United Nations on down, and three, just knowing to have an alternative way to communicate with our brothers and sisters. I think that's something that we should take from this conflict. I know I was going to share with you, Nkemba, and I'm going to do it right after this video, but there was a report released by the Tigray government that is very telling. And I think what they're basically saying is that everything going on the ground is not perfect, but it's not what they are saying it is, and it has to be put into context. So I feel like I talked too much. I'm sorry.
No, that was great. And you said the Tigray government put this out?
Yes. I'm gonna send it to you right now because I don't want to forget. I was supposed to send it to you last week. And I'll actually put it in the chat too for anyone that wants to read it.
Yeah, and it's like I appreciate everything you said. It's very important that we look at what's happening on the continent with a critical eye, and especially like outside of the areas where these conflicts or issues are happening. Of course, they're happening all over Africa, but in the instance of Ethiopia, if you're not in Ethiopia, who's shaping your perception of what's happening in Ethiopia is very important, because we will be looking at like the enemy as good guy, and the good guy as the enemy. We let the Western media tell it, because at the end of the day, it is them pushing, the financing, the arming of people on the ground in Africa. That's going to be coming from foreign powers. Like the sustaining of any conflict that's happening on the continent is going to be sustained by some Western corporation or government. So it's important to understand that. So the fighting is taking place also in the interest of whatever colonial power is inside of that country. So it's important for us to understand. That's why like with this conflict, I'm very cautious because I know both sides are more than likely being propped up by some Western, and that's just the cynicism in me, and so I'm just sitting back. But I do know like the Tigray people, the Tigray ruling class though has been in power though since 1991. It's a 30-year period, and so there definitely was time for some change. It is looking like they're trying to sustain their position of power or maintain a position of power, and fight to retain that right now. But one of the issues I talked about last week is the guy Abiy Ahmed, who's the prime minister. Being a former a member of the Tigray ruling class, part of that party. And this is someone who's consolidated all of the different political units in political parties in Ethiopia, into one single party. And so, which makes it much easier for him to even rule, as a dictator. But I don't know much about him. So that's what I'm saying. I just want to do some more research and be like really cautious.
And I do want to say, I'm sorry.
No, good.
With him, I don't necessarily, it's not necessarily him that I'm a fan of, by the way. I mean, I think he's just like any other African leader. And we've kind of seen that. I mean, Ethiopia is not like a revolutionary government. But I don't know, more so I look at Eritrea and I'm like, I just see a lot of the legacy of the revolutionary mindset, whether it's we won't take any US aid. And the last government, but right now they're the only government that does not take any funds from US aid. Before that, the ones who also didn't was Libya. And we know what happened to Muammar Gaddafi. And that actually, I meant to message you, I forgot, but like, it reminds me a lot of like Gaddafi, because I remember, I was still a kid, but I do remember when US was going in and it was like the same rhetoric. They said he was about to commit genocide against his people, that he shut it off and he was about to just start going in and killing. We know that was all a lie. The United Nations said these things. Hillary Clinton and who else? I think it was Sarkozy at the time, or Tony Blair wasn't one. No, I think it was Sarkozy. France and the U.S. They're saying all these things. We have to, we have a no-fly zone in Libya, and to where any African country wasn't able to get in. It's just it's very reminiscent to me when I look at kind of like what's fizzling over there. And obviously, it's not at the level yet. The Libya conflict that led to the region being destroyed and destabilized. But that whole thing is a lot of lessons that we can learn too, because I feel like Africa, either because it couldn't do anything because they were so tied into Western interest, or because they didn't want to do anything. I feel like Africa really felt the Libya and that whole region, which has now become like a center for slavery in a modern context. You have a lot of Africans try to get to Europe and they get captured in Libya by the Libyans, who are now mostly, a lot of them are right-wing people that were anti-Gaddafi, and they're now running a whole slave trade in Africa. So, yeah.
Yeah. But, I think like when it comes to whoever's in power in Africa, I think like the way we look at it is just like, like if you're not talking about uniting Africa, fighting against these colonial powers, then we're always going to look at you a little skeptical. But I think like also the important thing for us in the diaspora is to understand that we are part of this African nation, and if we have to become more organized. And build economic and political relationships with the people, with the governments of Africa, so that they're not so dependent on foreign corporations from Europe or the United States, or their governments. Once we build those ties, and we'll be able to help like sustain them once they break their relationship, they break the colonial hold over them, then we can begin to fight for or build a independent Africa, united Africa. But I think like the diaspora, Africans in the diaspora have to see ourselves as a nation, as part of a single nation. And so that's the work we have to do in the diaspora, because I think, Africa, in order for Africa to like really redeem itself, it's going to need it's going to need this to be an international struggle. So not just them fighting alone, but us as well. So, that's what. Any last thoughts before we transition?
I'm trying to find the report, y'all. I just can't find it. So if I find it, I'll put it in the chat and I'll say it.
Okay. Yeah. So that's our weekly roundup. We held it down. Frank is probably somewhere proud of us right now. So we're going to move on to the reading part of the podcast and book club. We're on page 423, reading Black Women's Manifesto, Double Jeopardy to be Black and Female. And before we get into that, I just want to encourage everyone to visit our website, wechargecolonialism.org, so you can learn more about our organization. As well, I want you to make sure you send us an email and become a member if you haven't. Because a lot of us, are like-minded. A lot of us, hear these conversations, and we think about like, what can we do? What can we do? Joint organization, I think, is very important. I know some of us may even be a part of another organization. You can still lend your skills, your resources to We Charge Colonialism. This is another organization that's fighting. We have many fronts, many organizations out there, and one of the things we want to do too is just collaborate, consolidate with different organizations, so we can be more effective in this struggle against colonialism. So that's info@, wechargecolonialism.org. Send us an email, find out how you can become a member. All right, so we're going to jump right into it. And again, I want to appreciate everybody for joining in on this discussion. And we're here every Saturday at 10 a.m. So I'm going to start with the first paragraph on page 423. I believe that's where we left off at. All right, certain Black men are maintaining that they have been castrated by society, but that Black women somehow escaped this persecution and even contributed to this emasculation. Let me state here and now that the Black woman in America can justly be described as a slave of a slave. By reducing the Black man in America to such abject oppression, the Black woman had no protector and was used, and is still being used in some cases, as the scapegoat for the evils that this horrendous system has perpetrated on Black men. Her physical image has been maliciously maligned. She has been sexually molested and abused by the white colonizer. She has suffered the worst kind of economic exploitation, having been forced to serve as the white woman's maid and wet nurse for white offspring, while her own children were more often than not starving and neglected. It is the death of degradation to be socially manipulated, physically raped, used to undermine your own household, and to be powerless to reverse this syndrome. It is true that our husbands, fathers, brothers, and sons have been emasculated, lynched, and brutalized. They have suffered from the cruelest assault on mankind that the world has ever known. However, it is a gross distortion of fact to state that Black women have oppressed Black men. The capitalist system found it expedient to enslave and oppress them, and proceed to do so without signing any agreements with Black women. It must also be pointed out at this time that the Black women are not resentful of the rise to power of Black men. We welcome it. We see in it the eventual liberation of all Black people from this corrupt system under which we suffer. Nevertheless, this does not mean that you have to negate one for the other. This kind of thinking is a product of miseducation. that it's either X or it's Y. It's a fallacious reasoning that in order that the black man to be strong, the black woman has to be weak. Those who are exerting their manhood by telling black women to step back into a domestic submissive role are assuming a counter-revolutionary position. Black women likewise have been abused by the system, and we must begin talking about the elimination of all kinds of oppression. If we are talking about building a strong nation capable of throwing off the yoke of capitalist oppression, then we are talking about the total involvement of every man, woman, and child, each with a highly developed political consciousness. We need our whole army. We need our whole army out there dealing with the enemy and not half an army. There are also some black women who feel that there is no productive role in life than having and raising children. This attitude often reflects the conditioning of society in which we live and is adopted totally, completely, and without change from a bourgeois white model. Some young sisters who have never had to maintain a household and accept the confining role which this entails tend to romanticize, along with the help of a few brothers, this role of housewife and mother. Black women who have had to endure this kind of function as the sole occupation of their life are less apt to have this utopian vision. Those who project in an intellectual manner how great and rewarding this role will be, and who feel that the most important thing that they can contribute to the black nation is children, are doing themselves a great injustice. This line of reasoning completely negates the contributions that black women have historically made to our struggle for liberation. These black women include Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, Ida B. Wells, Barnett, Mary McLeod Bethune, and Fannie Lou Hamer, to name but a few. We live in a highly industrialized society, and every member of the black nation must be as academically and technologically developed as possible. To wage a revolution, we need competent teachers, doctors, nurses, electronic experts, chemists, biologists, physics, political scientists, and so on and so forth. Black women sitting at home reading bedtime stories to their children are just not going to make it. Okay. I guess we could open up before we go into this next section. But yeah, I appreciate though what she's laying out. One thing to keep in mind is, for one, you know, our objectives and goals has to be different from the ruling class, from the bourgeois. Like, we have to have a revolutionary culture. So the roles that you see within bourgeois culture for the black man, for the black woman, it's not going to be the same. It cannot be the same. You know, we can't look at that as a model. And so, you know, I like how she pointed that, like, everybody, like the black man, woman, and child, you know, have to be involved, all hands on deck, you know, for this revolution. Yeah. And so those roles are going to be defined, and they're going to be fluid, you know, as well. You know, I think we've come a long way to understand that, you know, sometimes those roles will be fluid and changing, depending on the circumstances. But yeah, you know, did you want to say anything?
There was so much that she said that I think was so true. And I think I prefer this type of discourse about, you know, so I don't adopt the label feminist, even though obviously I agree with a lot of the premises of that ideology. I don't adopt it as an identity, because I think so much comes with that is dismissive of the uniqueness of the African experience and of the African woman. And so I don't see us as African people having the same issues that European society have. If you go back to the origins, of African societies and understand that African women were many times aside of the leadership roles, African women were not relegated to just being the housewife that just puts the kids to bed. African women many times were warriors. So there's a rich tradition inside of our culture that we can draw from. Whereas I think that some of us, we become engaged inside of these fights, you know, that we've kind of like taken on what white society deals with as being what we deal with. Now, we deal with serious issues, but we have to address them for how particular they are to us. Meaning, she spoke about it in the beginning, I think, when she said, the capitalist system has convinced many of our men that Black women are the ones who are disenfranchising them. And I think in a modern context, we also see the reverse, that a lot of Black women have been convinced that Black men are the ones disenfranchising them. So when you look like at things like some of the rhetoric that I hear, so many of our people who, many of who are very knowledgeable and conscious, but we just adopt these ideas without questioning them. It really shows why we cannot just engage with each other based on what we think the issues are, but we have to really do a deep dive. So I'll use a specific example. Many Black people will say, oh, it's the woman, she don't want the man in the house. It was welfare. They said, don't take the man in the house. So she kicked him out of the house. And the welfare state created single mother homes, and the single mothers can't raise men. And the woman, the worst one I've heard is that the women were given jobs, and therefore they felt like they didn't need a man. This is all rhetoric, right? We don't know that the origins of this rhetoric comes from things like the Moynihan Report. The Moynihan Report came up with this idea that African people have a pathology because we have a matriarchal system. But if you understand just the racism in that idea in itself, that a matriarchal system is a negative pathology, matriarchies are many times what was indigenous to Africa. So you see, we're engaging with each other based on what the white man's standard of family is, and not based on our own African families. Another example is inside of the European family, nuclear families are the ideal. So you have mother, father, children. That's not an African indigenous cultural thing. And it's one of those things that even has passed down despite enslavement. Many of our people still live inside of communal types of situations. So whereas they did studies, but white people don't talk to their extended family as much as Black people do. White people don't connect with their cousins, aunties, uncles like we do. We have more of an extended family, and that's really an inheritance that we have from Africa. If we were to judge ourselves and say, well, okay, you have grandma, grandpa, but where's mom and dad? Okay, it's not ideal that mom and dad's not there, but that's not a weakness. That's something that's indigenous in us and has actually allowed us to survive. If you look at how slavery was, how enslaved Africans were able to survive, it's because of the communal culture. If we were out there just trying to deal with as individually, we wouldn't have been able to survive the system. We survived because we were surviving off of each other and lending to each other. So I just thought it was a powerful statement that she made, that we have to be very careful. Do not adopt the narratives of what's wrong with the Black family that the white people have given us. Let's adopt it, understanding the history of racism in the indigenous African culture that has been a strength and not a weakness.
Man, that was a mic drop. That was a mic drop. Yeah, most definitely. I think it's very important to understand, all of these contradictions that we have is taking place under colonial conditions. Like that, it's really, it's what's I'm looking for, but it's creating all of these different problems that we are experiencing. And so, we get to the root of that, and it's not to say that we don't address whatever those contradictions are, between us. But at the same time, and the only way that we can resolve it, so keep it from perpetuating, is to end colonialism and racism. So we could go economic exploitation of Black women. The economic system of capitalism finds it expedient to reduce women to a state of enslavement. They oftentimes serve as a scapegoat for the evils of this system, much in the same way that the poor white cracker of the South, who is equally victimized, looks down upon Blacks and contributes to the oppression of Blacks. So by giving to men a false feeling of superiority, at least in their own home or in their relationship with women, the oppression of women acts as an escape valve for capitalism. Men may be cruelly exploited and subjected to all sorts of dehumanizing tactics on the part of the ruling class, but they brave someone who is below them. At least they're not women. Women also represent a surplus labor supply, the control of which is absolutely necessary to the profitable functioning of capitalism. Women are systematically exploited by the system. They are paid less for the same work that men do, and jobs that are specifically relegated to women are low paying and without the possibility of advancement. Statistics from the Women's Bureau of the U.S. Department of Labor shows that the wage scale for white women was even below that of black men, and the wage scale for non-white women was the lowest of all. I don't think that's the case now, but yeah, I think white women make more than black men, but white males 6,704, non-white males 4,277, white females 3,991, non-white females 2,861. Those industries which employ mainly black women are the most exploitative in the country. Domestic and hospital workers are good examples of this oppression. The garment workers in New York City provides us with another view of this economic slavery. The International Ladies Garment Workers Union, whose overwhelming membership consists of Black and Puerto Rican women, has a leadership that is nearly lily white and male. This leadership has been working on collusion with the ruling class and has completely sold its soul to the corporate structure. To add insult to injury, the ILGWU has invested heavily in business enterprises in racist apartheid South Africa with union funds. Not only does this bought-off leadership contribute to our continued exploitation in this country by not truly representing the best interest of its membership, but it audaciously uses funds that Black and Puerto Rican women have provided to support the economy of a vicious government that is engaged in the economic rape and murder of our Black brothers and sisters in our mother Africa. The entire labor movement in the United States has suffered as a result of the super exploitation of Black workers and women. The unions have historically been racist and chauvinistic. They have upheld racism in this country and condoned imperialist exploitation around the world, and have failed to fight the white skin privileges of white workers. They have failed to fight or even make an issue against the inequities in the hiring and pay of women workers. There has been virtually no struggle against either the racism of the white worker or the economic exploitation of the working woman, two factors which have consistently impeded the advancement of the real struggle against the ruling capitalist class. The racist, chauvinistic, and manipulative use of Black workers and women, especially Black women, has been a severe cancer on the American labor scene. It therefore becomes essential for those who understand the workings of capitalism and imperialism to realize that the exploitation of Black people and women works to everyone's disadvantage, and that the liberation of these two groups is a stepping stone to the liberation of all oppressed people in this country and around the world. All right. So I think that was another. My sister is going in on this particular read right here. I appreciate though, like she, just laying out how we can be used against each other, how capitalism, uses us against each other. One group, like Black men, being able to benefit at the expense of Black women, and in some cases, Black women being able to benefit, but also, to talk about even like these unions, how Black women were these unions who are talking about equity, in work and pay and so forth, but are really like those who are at the top, who are predominantly white, are really working in their own interests, and how African women are being exploited even in these unions. And so, like, understanding that, like, the interest is for everybody. If we're fighting for, we have to be fighting for the interests of the working class in general, Black men and Black women, equal pay, not the benefit of Black men first or the benefit of Black women, first. We have to see it as a single struggle and not just like a African woman or man struggle. But yeah, I know you want to go in, but
no, you said a lot. And so, yes, absolutely. It's not Black women struggle versus Black men struggle. And I think currently today, unfortunately, we are like right there. Like, I see Black women, this is the Black woman struggle, and Black men, this is the Black men struggle. And we're not thinking about how that weakens our position as a people. One, if you think about it, yes, we have particularized struggles, but there's not one of us that I don't think that's more or less oppressed than the other one. I think that because I'm a woman, I will suffer from violence that would be particular to an African woman. I'll suffer from being stigmatized, being sexualized, being looked at as weak. That's a certain particular struggle. And as a man, you will suffer from a particular struggle to you. Your masculinity will become something that is criminalized. It will become something that is looked at as danger. You will not be able to integrate into the societal construct, because unless you are no longer posed as a threat. And a lot of our people, I feel like we do things that compromise our womanhood and manhood. Like I see a lot of Black men go into corporate America, and they just kind of like talk like they're not even from where they're from. And it's like, you shouldn't have to do that. But that's what capitalism manipulates us to think, that we have to dial back from certain things that are unique to us. So I think if we understand that it's not that the Black man struggle versus the Black woman struggle, but the Black community struggle, but the Black community struggle requires different levels of us understanding the particularized nature of what we deal with. And even Black children, like she said in the beginning, Black children deal with things that are particular to them. If you look at things like how the youth are criminalized, if you look at how the youth are stigmatized, if you look at how like a lot of the policies that the United States government put out there, whether it was the war on drugs or the welfare acts, all of that was because of a fear of these young people overtaking the system. This is what's driving a lot of the anti-Black family issues. It's really that they're afraid of the youth. Not to plug myself at all, but I did write a book on this if anyone is curious, that a lot of the stigma historically, and it really began with the immigrant youth who came from Europe. They were stigmatized because of this fear of poor white people taking over. Same thing happened with Native Americans, the stigma of Native Americans taking over. Same thing happened with Africans, this fear of poor Africans who are disenfranchised taking over. So it means that we have to learn how to fight on multiple fronts without dividing the community. And that's a very tedious, it's a very difficult task that we have to do. But I think that we do that when we come up with love and not come with division. And so that's why we have to be analytical of, am I confronting you with the same vigor that the white man has confronted me with? Or am I confronting you out of a spirit of love? I see a lot of our Black spaces, it's not in love. A lot of it is driven by anger. I see a lot of the prominent social media personalities. If you listen to them long enough, they're not feeding you love, they're feeding you hatred. Anyone who would use things like buck breaking and stuff like that, like it's something that we're going to focus on, or call you a bidwinch, and all, like that's not love. There's no love in that person for the African community. That's coming out with the same hatred and vigor that the white man came at us with. So we have to analyze: are we doing this to come together? Are we doing this to react to the situation with more hatred and more vigor? That's only going to divide us. And so that's basically what I'm trying to say. Like we have problems as a community, particularized problems, but based on who you are in a community. If you're a child, if you're a woman, if you're a man, whatever you are, let's deal with it, understanding that it is the same community, but doing it in love will allow us to have multiple agendas, I think, where we can ultimately bring our people together.
Yeah, I agree.
One more thing, I just found a report. I'm putting it in the chat.
Yeah, this we have to understand, like, this is a revolutionary struggle. So we need a revolutionary education. I like how she even used the term miseducation. And I think, when we look at it, understanding the context, Black men have to understand, we all have to understand, but, Black men as well, as far as like their position in society, and how it has been shaped by colonialism, and the way that we do view and treat our women, our counterparts, is a result of colonialism shaping our view or perspective of Black women. And so even the particular policies, you go back Black men being able to vote and Black women not being able to vote. So that right there gives a privilege to Black men over Black women that can impact that dynamic between both groups. And being able to enter certain sectors of the economy as well. This history of Black women, only being able to take on domestic jobs, right? So again, that put Black men at a privileged position over Black women. So this history of these privileges in respect to Black women has given Black men a particular mindset, psychology when it comes to the relationship with Black women that has been influenced by patriarchy and colonial capitalism. So I think it's very important for us to understand that, and not go through just like when we learned that racism has impacted us, colonialism has impacted us, and we look to re-educate ourselves and not be influenced by these systems. That's the same thing with patriarchy. We got to constantly be attacking that. So yeah, let me see. Do I have time to read a couple?
We had a question, so I don't think. If we answer the question, I think that would.
Yeah.
I don't remember where it was. Let me see. Oh, it was Baruti. He said, please comment on whether you think that YouTubers like Cynthia G, critical of Black men, or Kevin Samuels, critical of Black women, are helpful to building harmony amongst African people. Want me to go?
Yeah,
so first of all, I don't
have no knowledge.
So Cynthia G, as someone I've seen on Flash on my YouTube, I've never watched a video. If you don't know, I'm more focused on Pan-Africanism, and so I don't focus on a lot of the individualized Black men, Black women, back and forth. So I've never watched a video of hers. I have watched some Kevin Samuels videos. I think that anyone who's going to talk about the issues of Black men and Black women with no proper onus being put on white supremacy, I think you should know that that person's not giving you a thorough examination of the problems as they exist. You can't leave the white man out. I'm sorry. A lot of you take responsibility for yourself. No. When you understand what social control is, that means that they put things out there with the expectation that, all right, we're going to do this. We're going to have this policy. We're going to put this here. We're going to put this community here. They have an expectation, like the same way that science, you do a experiment, you have an expectation, you put some chemicals inside of there, it's going to have a reaction. They had an expectation when they set things up the way that they are, that it was going to cause the reaction that it's causing. So to me, I haven't heard, again, I know Cynthia G, I don't watch a lot of Kevin Samuels. I've seen things pop up on my timeline. I haven't heard him have an analysis of any of that. So it's difficult for me to think that belongs inside of a revolutionary conversation. So it would be, up to you to look back and see if there's anything that points to the onus being on the white society that has created these conditions for our people. I would be curious to hear of that perspective. And I'm also with a lot of people. I do think that it's very demeaning what some of our people are doing. And I also think that a lot of the chair that a lot of people get who are social media personalities, whether it's him or others, is really from people who have been so hurt from the white supremacist structure that we want to feel like we're winning at something. And the winning comes whenever you see someone attack your brother or your sister. And I see this on both sides. Whenever you see someone go hard on Black women or hard on Black men, you'll see all the people who align with that backing them up, and they're happy about it because that to them is a win. But you don't understand that the win should not be a win over your brother or your sister. The win should be a win over the white supremacist structure.
Yeah, I unite with that. I'm sorry, I don't have any. I've heard of the Kevin Samuels guy, but I really don't have any take on. I don't. Just from the conversations that I heard around him, though, what people have been saying, it doesn't sound productive at all. And going to your point, you brought up social control. I think that's very important for our people. Like people who are here viewing this, for the most part, understand that. But a lot of our people, not too many of our people, don't have that particular understanding. Because the white man, white man, the colonizer wants you to like reflect. Deflect. He wants you to deflect and take it away from him, and look at, hey, what is it about you? It goes back to that sort of like that inferiority complex. Like there must be something about us why we can't get it right. Instead of looking at like the social control, social domination that's really has been able to influence every aspect of our lives. So yeah, I know we at the top of the hour, so we won't go too deep into that right now. But if you come back next Saturday, 10 a.m. I think we're gonna continue to go into this this reading right here. I think we can do a few more pages. So we'll see you next week at 10 a.m. I want to appreciate everybody for being here, and don't forget, make sure that you send an email, info@wechargecolonialism.org. Find out how you can be a part of the various programs that we have and the building and the fighting that we're doing to make sure that all of our people are liberated from colonialism. So until next time, peace.
Peace, everyone. Have a good one.